What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and today we're going to talk about self-publishing your own comic book, how to do it, where to start, what to get into, and we're going to talk about it with a friend of mine here. We got Mr. Noah Bass, aka Samurai Ox, as he's known on the interwebs. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. Usually on a Saturday morning, I don't tend to get up this early, but for you, I'll make an exception.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah,
Heck
you're
yeah, thanks for having me.
absolutely. Yeah, I think you're definitely one of those night owls. Every time, I want to check out the art casters or be on the art casters, I never can, but I always see, like, if I peek in right before I go to bed, Samurai Ox is in there on the chat.
Yeah, usually I make an exception, stay a little later for Artcasters, but since I've been doing my workout routine probably the last
Uh-oh. Looks like he froze.
get out to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. So like I just missed your show in the morning, and then I'm working out for 2 or 3 hours. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome, and it's awesome to hear about all the updates with your progress with working out and stuff. That's just really cool.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I need to do that myself. So yeah, man. One thing that is interesting to me is, you know, the 100 Days of Making Comics. It's a challenge. If you guys don't know, there's this challenge called the 100 Days of Making Comics. It's started by Kevin Cross, and it's working on your own personal project for at least a half an hour a day for 100 days consecutively in a row without any gaps. And Noah has done this as well as I have, and that's where I found out about Mr. Noah, and I think I found out after his first run, and I kept hearing everybody talk about this guy Noah, like all the other people. They're like, oh, he's like so prolific. He's putting out, he already put out like 3 books and this and that, and like I'm like, who is this kid? Like, what what's going on? And I went over and checked it out, and all I saw was a lot of awesomeness and excitement, and you just never stopped. Like, what issue are you on now? And I never forgot.
I've got 10 for the most part finished up. I got to do a few things in the back of it, but I've already started on 11. I've got it roughed out, and now I just got to start putting the pages to ink. So,
Wow, how many volumes is this gonna end up being?
it'll be 3 volumes, 13 issues in total. Um, and like thinking back on those first days, like, is just wild to me because those first 100 days, like, when I started this project, I thought comics were going to be making them was going to be the easy part, and like getting them published and everything was going to be a way more difficult part of it. But like when you get into it and get the work to the grindstone, like after that first issue, realizing how much work goes into each issue, like, was wild to me, and like it just stuck with it. And I was fortunate enough to like be having some problems going on in the background that afforded me the ability to be more diligent than just putting in a half hour a day. I think those first 100 days I was putting in 5 or 6, maybe even 7 or 8 a day, and like that's really what helped get that first one out the door and work on the second one for sure. Um, and that, yeah, I just never really slowed down from that point. It's really cool to see the evolution of issues because like I learn up new tricks for each issue, and like it slowly gets better and better and better. And like with these last issues, like I'm still kind of blown away that it's my artwork that I'm looking at. Especially these last 3 issues, like you can really see the difference from those first issues for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, for a while I was following your Patreon pretty closely, and rough times came. I wasn't able to be on everybody's Patreon like I wanted to, but I loved seeing your sketchbooks come through, and you could just see like all the progress you're making when you're just putting all this work into your sketchbook and then also working on your comic book constantly. It's really amazing. And, that's always been my, the thing that I've been most impressed of with you. And if you guys don't know, Noah's links, there's a couple links down below. He's actually running a Kickstarter right now for the second graphic novel of I Never Forgot. And so, and you can see the proofs right here, it looks like.
This is the first one. This is the physical book for the first trade, and then I've got the proof for the second one, which
Wow.
I'm stoked.
Awesome. And so, you can find the Kickstarter down there. And if you want to hang out and chat with Mr. Noah, he's also on Twitter, and that's where he likes to spend most of his social media time. And so definitely check out those links. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But, I was mostly impressed by just how prolific you were when I first found out about you. And I loved just seeing you just knock out pages and like, oh yeah, I'm going to finish like 3 pages today by the end of the day. And, like this kind of attitude. And to me, like, I feel like growing up, I paid attention to like other comic book artists and stuff in the industry, and they would always talk about, well, I finished like a page a day or something. And then you'd hear of like certain people like Kirby and stuff who do like 2 or 3 pages a day, which is like crazy. But I was always inspired by that fast-paced work and just the ability to be really prolific. I've always been inspired by that, as opposed to spending a long time. I mean, a lot of people talk about the comics they want to make, but you're actually executing, and a lot of people do execute as well. But it's just nice to see some people working at that kind of pace. It's something that I definitely aspire to. I'm just curious, and another thing too is on my channel, a lot of you people who watch on my channel here are kind of younger, or maybe not. Actually, there's a lot of all different age ranges, but there's a lot of people just starting out making comics. And sometimes I get this question from people, and it's, I don't have a computer, I don't have this, I don't have, fancy bristle board, I don't have all of these different tools and stuff. What can I guess I can't make comics. I even get that sometimes, and it's like, and I'm just curious, Noah, do you need fancy equipment to make comics?
That is 100% false truth. I think we tell ourselves that just to like, so we're not disappointed when we don't reach the heights that we possibly can. But like, here, I'm going to show you, like, these are my first pages I was working on. This is computer paper, and like, this is where I was drawing on, and like, it's rough for sure. But like, I didn't start on Bristol until the 3rd issue. And like,
you
can
put it a
see
little
all
more?
this line work, and like, that's basically all it was until I jumped and got a few, like, I want to say it was only like 2 or 3 of like the 6-packs of Copic, and really started coloring my work like that. Since then, I've been coloring with Copic, but like issue 3, I started on Bristol and ink. These first 2 issues were all just regular ink pen and like Copics, and like, to think back on that is just wild to me, considering where I am now. Like, I was probably filling up half a notebook just sketching out like the layouts and everything. And now for this last issue, I have it all laid out on post-it notes, and there's 4 post-it notes to a page, taking up 12 pages, half the issue. So like, when I have the notebook open, I can see the whole issue planned out. And it's so wild to think that that was only 5 years ago. And like, you just grow as you get better. I know with the first Kickstarter I ran for the first issue to get published, I think I was asking for either $200 to $300. Like, that doesn't cost much to publish the first issue. But I blew it out the water by like 600 or $700, and took that money and got a really nice scanner, not one of the all-in-one sets, but like an Epson just plain Jane scanner, and that held up for me through issue 7, I think it was. Issue 7's when I got my big beast that could handle a whole Bristol page by itself, so I wasn't sitting there stitching Bristol pages together anymore. And it's like it's just steps, and like that's probably the thing that keeps me so prolific, is because I know that I'm getting better over time, but I know that I have to put the work in now to get better each time. So with every issue, I learn a little bit more. And like, it wasn't until like a couple issues ago, like I just learned that like you don't really want to put like long letter bubble or monologue bubbles, dialogue bubbles, because that kind of kills the flow of your page. And like looking back on those first couple issues, there's a lot of times that I did that, and like it really does slow down the pace. And like now I want to go back and fix those problems. And like one of the stretch goals that I just put up this morning for the second trade is to actually redo the first issue, and not completely redo it, like keep a lot of the artwork, just change it up a little bit. And I went back and redid the artwork last year for Webtoons and their contest. So like a lot of the artwork is updated. I just want to go back and fix like speech bubbles and stuff like that now. And like I have to do that if I want to get it printed in newsprint, hopefully using the Alterna Comics printing program. So yeah, it's all a work in progress. And if you check out professionals like on Twitter and stuff, they'll tell you the same thing. Like it's just a learning process. And like I'm looking up to people that have been in the industry for 15, 20 years. Heck, even Jeff Lafferty was doing this 20 years ago. And like his stuff's super incredible. And it's really cool to see where he's gone from there, and like seeing his painted pages and stuff. Like I love Berserker Not just because like that's where I want to get to. And I painted a few panels, a few pages for this newest issue too. And like, it's cool getting to those points and like knowing that there's even more beyond that too. So, heck
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's so cool. And so also, thinking more also about the equipment and stuff. When you first started making your comic, how was your studio setup? Did you have a big desk with a digital tablet and 5 screens and things like that? How did you start off?
Honestly, it was the most rudimentary system you could imagine. I think I'm still basically just laying on my bed for most days, drawing on Bristol boards. But yeah, starting out, it was a stack of computer paper sitting at the table. And like I had a nice. It was a used kind of drawing board, and it was kind of shanty looking, but it worked. And like it had a couple different tools, like the ruler arm that you could get a little better, straighter lines. And like it's really just been paper, pens, and rulers from that point. A T-square here and there, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I would sit there and I'd watch your videos and stuff, and I'd be like, is he drawing on his bed? Like, he's just laying there on his bed drawing. Like, this is. I love it.
it's funny because like when I really started getting into it and watching more professionals, like they always complain about sitting down all day and their back hurting. And like I probably sat down and drew the first few issues up and realized that was a big problem. And if I was going to do this long term, I had to think about that a little better. The cool thing about doing it that way is like it allowed me to do overhead shots a little bit easier, showing my progress and me working on things like that too. So
Cool. Cool. Now, talking about more on the like publishing side, now, people might say, well, I'm still pretty new at this. My art is, it's the best I can do, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to publish a comic yet. Like, what would you say? Like, when should you start publishing a comic, or think about it? Like, does your art skills have to be to a certain level? Do you have to draw like Jim Lee, or what do you think?
No way. I feel like if you're passionate enough to be drawing and making a comic, I think that's the point where you need to be starting to publish. I think back when I got the first box of 100 issues printed, and it was just such a big deal. Like, even those first couple rough passes, I actually think I have one here, but like when it shows up and you have your own artwork in a published form, like there's something about that just drives you even harder at that point. Um, but like getting that to build up that fire inside you and work even harder towards hitting goals even faster. And like that's probably what carried me through that first year and 4 issues, is because like getting to that point of seeing the next issue. And even when Gaz got his first comic published, I was like, you should definitely record when that box shows up, because like it kind of overwhelms you when and you don't know how to respond, and like those pure reactions of seeing your comic for the first time. Even when I surprised Jan a few years ago and like uh, published his rough issue of Phosphor and sent it with all those rewards. Like, he was so grateful, and like I think he still has a few copies and he shows them around to people, like knowing that like that's what he does, and he's a genuine comic artist, and like he might not spend day in day out doing it like I do, but there's no taking that away from it because he has published work at this point. And like I'm excited to see his first issue, and like all the art that he's doing for that is so incredible at this point. Like when his first issue does come out, it's like going to be so much further than what I'm doing right now. And like that's what we've been doing like the last few years, is like every mile marker I hit, he's hitting it about 2 years ahead of me. And like his art's just so good. And like if you haven't checked out Jan, definitely check him out. He's another 100 lum, and I'm sure he's been on this show a few times, so like definitely check him out too. So
Yeah, Animal's a beast for sure. So also, like, how long were you thinking about making comics and wanting to make your own stories and stuff like that? And before you actually did, and how instrumental was 100 days of making comics for you to get that ball rolling?
so I think from the time I had the concept was probably late 2014, and I had kind of thrown together a rough outline, and like a few things came here and there, and like kind of propelled me forward to like thinking that the story needs to really come about. And like then I started watching Kevin's videos of the 100 Day Making Comics, and he was doing it. He was doing exactly what I wanted to do, and like I felt like I wanted to get somebody else to draw, because obviously my art wasn't up to snuff at that point, to where I thought it was going to be worth somebody throwing down money for a comic. And then like tried shopping it around to people to draw, and I was not working at the time. I'm still not. I don't have a day job or anything like that, but realized it was going to be out of my possibility to hire somebody to do that. And like being an artist myself, wanting to pay them something of a reasonable wage to do this for me, I realized that it was going to be on me to do it. So I just started, and like that's probably why I started with the puppet drawings style. It was something I could do rather easily, and throughout this process, I wanted to show my artwork getting better, and like starting with this simple form and expanding on that as I got better just helped me even more. Um, but once I got that first issue done, it was on to the second one and running, um, because I knew each issue roughly takes a good month to 2 months to finish up. And I was staring down the barrel of a 13 issue series, and knowing at that point it was going to at least take me 2 years to do, if not longer. And then hitting up cons and doing this and that and starting to become a little bit more of a freelance artist kind of stretched a few of those issues to a few more months than I'd like. But then I started becoming a pretty good freelance artist, and people were commissioning me more. And like, I essentially have to set aside my October through December of the year just because I pick up commissions for Christmas and stuff like that. So like, it started knocking chunks of the year off at that point. But yeah, as soon as I started seeing my artwork getting better and better, I was excited to see where the series is actually going to end up. And like, especially issue 10 is incredible. And like, once I start inking issue 11, I'm pretty excited to see where that's going to be, because I know the end goal and I don't want to spoil anything, but like, it should be a pretty great crescendo these last four issues for sure. And especially seeing the improvement over these next issues too.
Awesome. Awesome. How would you say, how would you say, like, effective and helpful was the community of comic creators towards your progress initially getting started?
Uh, Boy, it was awesome those first 100 days for sure. Because we had a group of us that was doing it all about the same time. It was me, Gaz, you were doing it, and Mike was, and we were all just kind of rooting and cheering everybody on. And it's cool to see that nowadays still too. Corey Kerr didn't realize he was a professor until like a month ago, and like a couple of his students have been checking out their 48-hour check-ins. Um, and it's cool to see them younger than we were starting out and like getting this passion for comics too. I think the community is a big part of why I stay so active and rock these comics as prolifically as I do. And staying up for the Artcasters when it comes around weekly, just because it's a chance to reconnect with these friends and artists, people that I admire and want to see do great things alongside me. So it's
Mm,
just really cool having this great community that all of us are essentially helping each other get to the next rung too. So
yeah. Yeah, I definitely would agree. I mean, it's just really interesting to have been involved with all these people for so long and see where they started and see where they've come to. And I can see the future too. Like, I feel like I can see some really cool things for a lot of people in their future and stuff. And it's really cool to watch that progress and to be a part of, some of it too, as far as like we put out 2 anthologies, which is
yeah.
crazy. I'm waiting for my new one in the mail soon. I hope to get it soon. And it's
But
just
even that, I was
really
thinking about
exciting.
getting the first one 2 years ago, and where it was we were 20 artists that did that first book, and like, I think at that point maybe five of us had published artwork, so it was cool seeing everybody else that hadn't had anything published at that point having this book with their name on it. And like, the uproarious chatter that helped spur on the second anthology put together. Like, it's such an awesome community to be part of. Like, if you're even have an inkling of taking the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge, I highly suggest it. I've seen a few people failing a couple of weeks ago, and like, it's really awesome because we have this great community that like is there to catch them. And like, I know they're down on it, and like, it's not easy getting through the 100 days. You'd think it would be, and like, everything that is encapsulated with it, it's just a rough 100 days for sure. But I think building those habits is a great thing to have. And like, even though a couple people recently failed at like day 70, it's like, over this last 5-year process, I know that failing only leads to greater success because you're in there trying and you're getting after it. And like missing a day isn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, you fail the challenge, but start it up again.
Yeah.
Start and get that 100-day notch in your belt. I have it 4 times at this point, and like it's not necessarily challenging for me anymore because I mean I'm drawing comics daily, and like I very rarely take a day off. Recently, I've been taking like Saturday and Sunday off anymore. That's only to put work towards doing the podcasting weekly with my friends. So it's a great community to join up, and like I don't think we've had too much bitterness amongst us because we're all friends at that point and we're all trying to get to the same goal and publishing comics and making our own stories a reality. And that's such a cool process to be part of everybody else's, and like seeing it's so cool seeing everybody else's artwork styles, because I don't think I've seen anybody that's too like anybody else, and like they're all unique and they're telling their stories, and like their lines are so different than everybody else's. Like Pepper's watercolors are so cool, and I love seeing all the art cards and stuff that he does. And like we've had a couple people that are very prolific on updating webtoons daily, and it's really just cool seeing all that stuff. And like we're all learning different school skills along the way, and we're really great about telling each other about them. And I think the StreamYard thing was the biggest thing, is like we didn't know what we were going to do about Google Hangout, and like this thing came about, and now we're all trying to learn about this and all this other stuff. So it's just a really great community to be part of, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely agree. It's really cool, and I see that there's at least one, maybe a couple questions in the chat. We're definitely going to try to get to those in a little bit. So let's see. Now, to me, I can't help like but think about how like it doesn't take much. Like I just want people to realize that when it comes down to making comics, it's hard. There's a lot that you can go to crazy lengths. You can put out like a premium graphic novel with hardcover and foil this and beautiful this and beautiful that. But you can also sit down and with a copy whatever paper you can find, a pencil, a Bic pen if you want, and you can staple together a little mini comic or whatever. Like you can make comics no matter what you're doing, and you can find a way to publish too. And even when you're maybe at a beginning level, you can still run a Kickstarter even and be successful with that. And to the point with Kickstarters, I think I just saw on your Kickstarter you've done 10 so far, correct?
I think this will be my 9th one for my actual series, and then I've been contributing to the 2 anthology ones.
Okay, so Noah didn't ask anybody's permission to do this.
Yep.
He didn't like have to go through any hoops. He just did it. He made it.
And honestly, there's a big learning curve, but like we were just talking about, the community is we're here to help you with any questions that you do have. I for the most part, it seems like I'm beating my rock against the stone wall trying to figure out how to do things. And I'm still like resizing things in MS Paint and putting together my PDFs in a Word equivalent at this point, just because that's easier and that's how I know how to do it now. But like, there's so many people that know how to do Photoshop, and if you have Photoshop questions, like they'll help you out with that. And like, if you check out my Kickstarter, it's the actual campaign and story and details of it. Like, it's all rough. Like that, all that stuff's just scanned in on the computer. And like now, I have the availability of my iPad that I can help touch some of that stuff up and make it look a little bit better. But I also just kind of really like the roughness of it and the roughness around the edges, because like this is my first comic series, and I know. I'm not expecting it to be anything great, but it's the starting of the process and getting that first story out there and having the story to tell. I think Muttman was just asking if he should wait on his bigger ones. And I know Josh Kimball has talked about this. Like, he did his magnum opus out of the gate, and I don't think he's published it, but now he's working on this very real dear story to himself. And like, it's just cool seeing that process. And this 13 series run that I'm working on is very near and dear to myself. Um, I think that's probably one of the easier ways it took to get started on this, because I started making the stories that I wasn't seeing out there, um, and I know Scotty Young and Jason Brubaker have said the same thing. Like, when you are looking for that story and you have one very similar, go out there and tell your own story. Like, there's plenty of space out there for everybody's. And to talk about these Kickstarters, that first one I was only shooting for $300, and like, people are very willing to chip in. Like, I've over this last week of doing this Kickstarter for myself, like, I've been revisiting a few other people, and I didn't realize like Hybrids is on its fourth issue right now. I know backing that like 3 years ago, and there's so many cool projects right out there right now. Even James Roche, who does Wretches, has his first volume coming out. And I remember kickstarting the first 2 issues of that, and I think the volume is going to be 4. Um, and now he's publishing with Diamond and getting it into comic book stores too. And like, there is a low bar for entry, and you just have to start. Even with this free comic book day, this last one in May, there was one that was, I want to say it's Emil Ferris, I think, but she does all her comics on notebook with like colored ink pens. And it's such a cool style, and you don't see that out there. But like, you see the lines of the notebook paper, and it's like, it's a very similar thing I do with my sketchbooks. Like, I put all these things in the back of my notebooks after I get done writing the issues and roughing it out, and like, all the details of what led to making this last issue. And like, it's just a cool thing to see, because everybody's style is unique, and if you think you have a unique story to tell, you do, and you need to get it out there as soon as possible, for sure.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that kind of rough style of aesthetic as well. Anyways, as it is, but I think it's interesting too, like how starting at kind of where you did, like, can you talk a little bit about like how did you build an audience? Like, how did you get to the point where you could, do a Kickstarter? You did it for 300 and you ended up getting a lot more, and then now you're up to this point where now you're getting, commissioned by people, and you're on this, your ninth successful Kickstarter and things like that. Like, how did you build that audience?
A lot of it's been the Hunters community. Those first few issues, for sure, I was contacting people that I knew were reading comics, and it was a low bar because you're just asking people like $10 for an issue. And if you go to cons, you see people are ready to check out a new story, take a chance on that with $10 for sure, because a regular comic costs $5. So supporting an indie artist for twice that is so worth it, because you're not only supporting or helping them dream, but like, their story is getting out there even further. And that's such a cool thing to do. And those first Kickstarters, I think I was only shooting for a few $100 each time. And like, people want to see you reach that. So like, I think that first one, I was close to hitting the goal in the first week. And then uh, my best friend's mom, who actually gave me like this slew of art supplies that kicked off this whole dream of mine, um, went to bat for me and dropped twice of what I was asking for, commissioning me for a painting on a tier that I didn't think was going to happen. Um, to go from that, and I think issue 8 a couple years back, I was shooting for 1250, something like that. But it cost maybe $500 to do a 100 issue run, and that's my books. That's perfect bound. That's glued 48-page books, each one of them. But like if you're shooting for a saddle stitched 26-page, 28-page story, I want to say it's probably half that. It probably only costs like 250, 300. I know with my printer, he I think he does 28 pages inside colored for 250, something like that. And when you're putting numbers around like that, like that's $250, maybe $50 for press setup. But like there's so many places around the internet you can get short print runs for sure. But at this point, I've been with my printer for 5 years, and I kind of have a sense of loyalty to him. But like this last week and this last Kickstarter has been such a roller coaster for sure. Um, I have a con coming up in the beginning of November, and for the most part, I had the second trade put together. It just needed a few last pages finalized and whatnot, and I think like I'm running low on my issue 5 through 9 set. And with this Minnesota con being a little bit bigger, I figured the trade would be the perfect place for that. So I'm not charging people $50 for a run. Rather, it's going to be $20 for this trade. And that's such a lower bar of entry to get into my story. Even the two trades being $35 for the two of them is so easier to get into rather than looking down at 9 to 10 issues for 90 to $100, because that's what I sell them at, because they cost $5 to make. And this trade cost, I want to say it's like $12 to print. It'll be a little bit less if I can get up to the next stage of getting 100 printed, but I'll probably stick with either 50 or 75 for the first run. But yeah, it's been wild this last week. Building a audience really takes effort on your behalf. I set it out there for the first few days, hit $500 in the first few hours. I want to say it was like 6 hours, and I was at $500 and just didn't think it would be that hard of a time at all. Then I went away for the weekend and came back Monday, and it hadn't moved an inch. And if you check my Twitter, you can see all this stuff. Like you can see all the range of emotions this week's been for sure. Um, and like Tuesday, I dug in and really pushed, and like you go through your friends list and just say, hey, I'm an artist doing this project. If you want to help support, I'd be more than appreciate it. And like probably contacted in the area of between 1,000 and 1,500 people, and like 40 people showed up and said, hey, I like what you're doing and I'll support you for sure. And like that's all it takes. Like up to this point, I've always held on the belief that it takes 30 people to get you 100 or 1,000 on Kickstarter, and like that's not a hard goal to hit at all. I'm sure you can think of 30 people that would more than be happy to help you. If you contact me on Twitter and tell me you're launching your first Kickstarter, I'll show up for sure. You message me, you at me, I'll be there. Because I'm such a fan of people trying their hand at getting their stories out there, and I want to support more artists like that for sure. And these 40 people helped me hit $2,000 this time to get the second trade published, and it's just so overwhelming. Like when it hit the goal yesterday before the 48-hour mark, where it reminds everybody that's like, hey, remind me when it's close to ending. It was overwhelming, and I was brought to tears last night because like I honestly didn't think I was going to hit the mark on this one, and it was going to be the first one I failed for the comic series for sure. But like digging in and messaging everybody I knew and just getting the word out there, because even you said before we started the show, like you didn't know I was running a Kickstarter until I messaged you directly. And like at that point I had posted on Facebook a couple times, said something on Twitter about it, and like the algorithms aren't going to help you. So if you want to see your story come to life, it needs to be present in this world, but also you got to work to get it there too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know, and I should know because we run in the same exact circle. Like it doesn't even make sense that I wouldn't know, but
yeah, and I mean that's the big thing is like I remember Gas saying the last couple of Kickstarters like he'd get close to his goal and start messaging people about it, but like they had no idea that he was running Kickstarters, and like
yeah.
that's a big deal if you're running a Kickstarter because like Kickstarter is the embodiment of stress and and getting all this work into one place for sure. But I mean, it's there to help you for sure. And like I came up with these slew of excuses, like it's such a short campaign, and like I'm shooting for the most that I've ever asked for, and the problems with Kickstarter the last couple of weeks with the whole union issue and everything, like I just felt like people weren't gonna help, and like people showed up, and like it's just cool. Like these last couple of days on my Facebook's just blown up with all the support and love that I've been shown, and like it's just really overwhelming. So
Yeah, it's so awesome. And so I want to pick up on a few things that I think probably helped you with building an audience, and I think a lot of them actually just come natural to you, and you might not even think of them as a strategy, but they are very helpful, and people should think about this stuff. Is one of them I see is you're not greedy about what you're trying to do. Like you look at what you need and you're like, okay, this is the minimum I need. I'm just going to shoot for that. If I get more, awesome, cool. Another thing is positive attitude. If there's anybody I think of having a positive attitude on social media, and it's like it's literally you, like the good vibes are always there. Like I always can look to what you're doing for some encouragement, and so that's a huge thing as well. Sharing enthusiasm about the work you're working on. You're really into the book you're into. You're not just like, I want to get this done so I can move on to the next thing, even though you have other next things. You're like, this is the story I've been trying to tell. You're sharing the enthusiasm about it. And then giving more. This is something that people don't necessarily notice until they back one of your Kickstarters and they find out, oh, I ordered a book. I have a package full of things here, all kinds of things that I didn't expect. I mean, that's what happens typically on a Kickstarter, but you go above and beyond that usually. Whenever I've ordered anything from you, I've gotten a ridiculous amount of stuff. And I've heard many other people say that too. And also being authentic and sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Like I've seen you go through the roller coaster of emotion with things and not be afraid to share your true colors and stuff. And it's inspiring, and I think that people need to, you don't have to share, you don't have to share like, your social security number and your bank account, but you can share a little bit of emotion of how it felt when you were having a hard time with this, or how excited you are to get a box of comics in, and all this stuff. You share all that stuff. And I think that people, just by observing things, they can find out some really good ways to get the word out.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Like, um, yeah, when I started this whole process, I was ordering from a few different people, their comics through the internet and like Kickstarters and everything, and like something that stuck out when people throw in an extra sticker or two, like you tend to notice that a little bit more than if you're just getting what you signed up for, and like that's something I've been striving for. Like I want people to remember that I'm it's not lost on me how grateful I am that people are helping me reach for these dreams that I'm trying to accomplish, and like the excitement that I have for this story is everything that I've built up to this point. Like my artistic skills getting better, you can read that in the lines that I'm drawing. Like, it's just a cool process to be part of. And like, I've had a few people over the years like have started their own comics just based on like seeing the scratches from my first issues and like all the roughs that I had in like notebooks along the years for sure. And then like people can see that excitement that I have in those lines, and like then they come to talk to me about it, and like I'm even just excited to share more about the story with them. And like it's just really cool how these 4 to 6 characters have grew more than I could have anticipated when I started this whole process for sure. Um, but yeah, I'm always here for positive re-encouragement. Like, um, I was just saying, Corey Kerr on Twitter, like he just throws out these wild ideas half the time, and like some of his students and everything that are doing the 48-hour check-in and whatnot. Like it's awesome seeing their enthusiasm for it, and like it's just getting me more hyped for all my projects that I have coming up, because knowing that they're gonna have projects here soon, shortly, and like I think a few of them have done sticker stints and stuff like that. And, like that's something I want to get into more. So like picking their brains about that, like it's just awesome to be an artist right now, even though it seems like it's a difficult road to travel for sure.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's never been a better time, I think, to do this kind of thing, and I think Noah is a great example. And you only need what you have. Use the resources you have. Just be yourself and try to be as positive as you can, not in a fake way, but just when you have a joyous moment, express that. Um, when somebody's helping you do what you're trying to do, express gratefulness, thank them, things like that. I've just seen a lot of that kind of stuff from Noah. And I do want to get into some of the things. If you guys have any questions for Noah or for me, we've both had some experience here, and we'd love to answer anything. I just wanted to highlight Manali. How you doing? Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. This is really cool to see you guys there, kind of interacting and stuff. But Manali is saying that they're trying. She's trying to. I think it's a she is trying to do kind of the Amazon type of thing, and the Kindle Direct Publishing, and having difficult time because the formatting and stuff. And I would just say, like, yes, that kind of thing is hard. It can be hard. It's worth looking into. I'm sure there's some. I've never actually done that personally, but I'm sure there's some tutorials online. But definitely get into some groups. Try to ask that question to people specifically. But also, you know, if that is proving to be a little bit too difficult, just ways you can do and like
And
Noah is talking about.
I wonder if the Kindle Direct Publishing parameters are similar to Comixology, considering Amazon bought Comixology last year, something like that. But I know making those PDFs and submitting them aren't the easiest thing. But like I was said, I was using Microsoft Word to make them, so I'm definitely going to check into that a little bit more. And the big thing is a lot of people scan things in at 72 dots per inch, just because like that's what the internet uses. But if you up that to 300 dots per inch, gives you a pretty hefty file. Drop that down to JPEG and put it into a Word document, with just the images on the pages. Resize your pages. You can ask me on Twitter, and I'll explain this a little bit easier if you're not grasping what I'm throwing down. But and then you can export that as a PDF, and that's what I've been dropping into Comixology, and they seem to be fine for them. So I imagine it's probably a pretty similar um, uh, process with them. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is worth looking into Amazon and Kindle. People are doing really well with that, especially in the prose book market. But also, I think that it would be nice if some of us comic creators that aren't Marvel and DC, if we can try to crack that egg. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then we already kind of mentioned this Muttman's question. He says, I've got lots of story ideas. Some I'm more excited about than others. Should I save my best ideas after I've developed my drawing skills more, or just get those stories out there? And Ox was already saying, Josh Kimball is a pretty good example of somebody who has, taken the big idea and just gone for it. But he has done other stories in the past, but this is what he's focusing on now. Yeah, I mean, to me personally, I don't know. It really is a personal choice. If you feel like you just can't not do the big story, then you just got to do it,
Hmm.
But I like what Noah was saying. Is like I'm staring down the barrel of 13 issues. Like, so I got to find a way to make this a quicker process, or just to make it happen.
Hmm.
And he did that. He also saw. I'd love to have somebody else do the art. But I can't afford it, so I'm gonna make it happen. So use your resourcefulness for sure. And I
And
already
he,
know, Jason, that you're doing your thing with the hero comic, which I
and I
love
mean, even
to see.
even you seeing your drawing skills improve over the years. Um, like I said, I just went back and retouched up for the first issue last year for Webtoons. I think it gets easier as you go along to go back and retouch it. So starting it there and getting the ball rolling on drawing your comics is the biggest barrier to overcome for sure.
Mm,
Even Holly Brown has done her first volume of Purgatory and was starting on the second one. And I believe has gone back and redid the first few hundred pages, I think, of that. Um, and like it just becomes easier to do once your skills improve for sure. So I think just getting it started in those stories and putting them out there for sure is the first thing you need to do.
yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do, and I feel like my strategy has been kind of the exact opposite. It's been try to get as many stories out as possible, and I like the idea of putting some of those stories in mini comics, putting some of those stories in anthologies. There's a lot of opportunities to put some of your different stories in different anthologies and stuff like that. It's a great way to do it, but I'll tell you, it's actually in some ways it works against me, because every time I create a new story, I have to create a new world. I have to do new designs. I have to do new this, new that, and all that stuff takes extra time. Now, something that's really awesome to be said for something like what Noah's doing, and what I've seen a lot of other creators do with a bigger project, is like he was saying, you get the ball rolling, and there's really something to be said about momentum. And once you get that momentum going, you know, I noticed it even with this little 13-page comic I'm doing, the Lone Wolf comic. Once you get that momentum going, you by page like 3 or 4, you already know how to draw whatever it is you drew before, and so it becomes a lot quicker, and you start to get certain skills under your belt, and it goes quicker and quicker and quicker on actually making the comic, but also in promoting the comic as well. And if you get, you might have a bigger project, but you can break it into however many pieces you want. So promoting it, you you know, Noah has done. He's up to issue. What did you say? What issue? I think 11 or
Number 10.
12.
Number 10 is the one I'm
Number
kickstarting
10.
right now.
So
But
he's like up to issue 10, but he's already done a trade paperback, and he's on his second trade paperback now. And then he's going to have a third one. And so there's all these different ways you can break it up, so you can also still be building up that actual career too at the same time. So there's definitely something to be said for doing a bigger project.
I mean, you look at there's a few artists that I follow that have gotten picked up. Daniel Warren Johnson. is a artist in Chicago area, and he's been doing his own project, Space Mullet, for at least 5 years at this point. And somebody, the right person, walked by him at a con and gave him a shot at doing Extremity for Image, and then he just finished up Murder Falcon for Image as well. And I want to say November next month he'll be doing Wonder Woman for DC,
Oh
and
wow,
I'm so excited about it. He's got such a fluid, eccentric style.
I love his
He
style.
does a lot of ink brushing, and like you can really tell with his style. Follow him on Twitter if you aren't, because I'm pretty excited about Wonder Woman coming up. I think he just got proofs the other day for that first issue, and I'm down for sure.
Yeah, I haven't been interested in DC a lot of times, but that is actually a book that popped up on my radar because I do love his work. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. So, you can do it like, and you can start from indie, and you could even get to that place. That's crazy. I mean, in his style, it's awesome, but it's not the most super polished style either.
Oh yeah.
It's a very kind of rough style, and I don't know, but it's awesome. I love it. There's a lot of energy there and a lot of great storytelling. Yeah, there's so many cool places we can go with all this stuff. And I think the big point here is, should you do your bigger story? Should you do your other smaller stories? I think the biggest point is to get started, and I already know Jason specifically. His real name's Jason. He's been on the show before, and he's the artist behind the Hero Hiro comic. And I already know you're putting in work. You've already started with things you're doing. But yeah, if you're looking at a bigger project or whatever, it doesn't matter which one you do. Both ways can work. Just get started, make a decision. That's even more important. It doesn't matter what the decision is, but make a decision is more important, because once you have the car rolling, you can steer it, but you can't steer a car that's not moving, so
Yeah, I remember back to one of the first 100 runs that me and Gaz were doing alongside, and he always did the a rising tide raises all ships. But I was quick to point out that you can't improve on a blank canvas, so you got to have something to work with first. So get those ideas down there and start refining them at that point, for sure.
I love that. I haven't heard that one. You can't improve on a blank canvas. I like that.
Heck yeah.
Nice. All right. So, so now that we've talked about all this stuff, where can people find what you're up to and what you're doing, man?
So the easiest place is Twitter. That's where I'm speaking daily. I hit the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, give a little update on how my workout went. Recently, these last 2 weeks, I've been writing while I've been walking too. So you're getting new story ideas for me along the way as well. But I'm going to be picking up YouTube again here shortly. I'll be making some weekly update videos for sure. Probably talking about what we discuss on the podcast weekly, and showing off what I'm working on, especially with issue 11 starting here soon. Obviously, the Kickstarter's got a couple days left. We have hit the goal, but I just did an update earlier today, and I made these special 12 pages for the con coming up, and this is the next story that I'll be working on afterwards, and it's here. Let me show it off a little bit. But it's superheroes, and it's me and my friend's superhero story, and it looks wildly different from I Never Forgot. Along with that, a 12-page little evolution of I Never Forgot, and you can definitely see the progress that I've made over the years, for sure. And then I know you were talking about my sketchbooks that you like digging into, but I've got this 12-page little deal where it's like this is art from 2015. And when I went from painting to actually working on comic stuff, 2016's a little bit sparse just because I was so heavy into working on my comic work. Um, but then it picks up at 2017 because that's when I started daily drawing, and you can see definite improvements. 2018, last year, just so cool. You can see where all my lines have picked up, and then a few from 2019 and Carnival Harley, which I'm proud of. Some digital work that I've been starting now that I've got my iPad, and like just so cool. So if that Kickstarter gets to 2250, which I don't think I'll have any problem getting there in the next couple days, those are just going to be included with all the rewards for sure. And then the big goal is 2750. I will actually work on getting issue 1 in newsprint form. So
And you know
fingers
what?
crossed.
I didn't even think. Yeah, absolutely. All that stuff is really cool. And I don't know why I didn't have you do this yet, but just before we get going, let everybody know what is I Never Forgot even about? Like, what's that story?
So this is straight from the back of this evolution book. This is the goal of a drifter wanting to accomplish one last goal before he can pass the next life happily. Set in the zombie apocalypse, meeting a few people along the way and dealing with obstacles seem to allude to a much more complicated path and what would it take to reach for you to reach your goal in your final journey too. Um, the first trade has him meeting new people. Uh, it's called Trust for a Reason. He doesn't actually reveal his name till the 4th issue because he doesn't trust people. The second trade is titled Love for a Reason because he's falling in love and remembering why this world's so awesome and that he wants to be part of again. But something cool happens in the last issue of this trade, and it'll be a very cool reveal for the last issue of the whole series coming up in 13 down the road. But yeah, super excited. Thank you for having me on the show. Super excited. I love watching these videos when I get a chance while I'm drawing too. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's funny. All this time, and I think this is the first time you've ever been on my channel, which is really weird because we've known
Is
each
it
other.
really? That's wild.
Maybe
That's
there's
really wild.
possibly another time, but I don't think so. So yeah, thank you for being able to come on the show, and I'm glad you got up early to do this. I really appreciate it.
Heck yeah, man. It's been
And for
good.
everybody watching, thank you once again, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
Right on.